Hi, my name is Dana Filippini, and I'm your expedition leader on your Wild Alaska Escapes. For the next 6 days, your home will be on the National Geographic Sea Lion. We are going to be going through fjords and walking amongst beautiful temperate forests. We're going to be looking for the wildlife that is iconic to Alaska. Our adventure begins here in Sitka. We're going to be cruising the fjords and be amongst the glaciers, all the while looking for the wildlife that is iconic to Alaska. We'll be looking for humpback whales, we'll be looking for orca, we'll be looking for bears, and whatever else happens to come our way. So let the adventure begin. Welcome aboard.
This morning we got to enjoy one of the coolest wildlife experiences in the world, in my opinion. We got to experience humpback whales, cooperative bubble net feeding. Now what is that? They work as a group. This is a group of unrelated individuals. They gather here in Southeast Alaska every summer and they work together to eat herring. It's incredible. We saw a group of nearly 20 whales. One of the whales is blowing bubbles underwater. One of them is screaming, which scares the fish, and we're listening to it on our hydrophone. They all gather up, they rush to the surface, and they feast on these fish. They lunge out of the water, mouths open, body parts sticking up, and herring are flying everywhere. It is incredible. So these whales have perfected this technique, and they're doing it fairly shallow, somewhere between 50 and 150 feet deep. Sometimes they're very, very close to shore. So they're not out in the open, deep channels. Sometimes they're right against the shore, and it makes for this dramatic experience to see these whales rushing up with trees and a beautiful background. So after they do the bubble netting, they're all breathing at the surface. They're recharging their oxygen. Then they need to go back down deep. They want to get back down below the fish. So they lift that tail high, and that's signaling a deeper dive, and down they go. We had some incredible close views. We were able to look right into their mouths. We could see the baleen, the brush-like plates hanging from the upper jaw. We could see the top of the inside of their mouth pink. We could see the fish going into the mouth, fish escaping. So incredible. As we watched them, they'd all take a number of breaths, and then one tail up after another, after another. Each underside of a tail is just like your fingerprint. You can identify them to individuals. We know who these whales are. We've been watching them year after year. There they go, one after another, down they go, over and over. One of certainly the coolest wildlife experiences in the world.
Today we had the awesome opportunity to go to Pavlov to see the bears feeding in the stream. We were able to see at least 4 individuals. Some of us hiked out a little bit sooner, but we had a mama bear and her cub, and we had 2 juveniles who their behavior showed that they probably were just weaned from the mom this season, and they were a little hesitant to go deeper into the falls when the adults were there. We have 2 different types of bears here in Southeast Alaska. We have brown bears, which are also considered grizzly, and we also have black bears. And the ones that we saw at Pavlov were the coastal browns, which are omnivores. They're going to be digging the roots, and they use their really sharp claws in the front to really be really good diggers. That's also on the back. They have a big hump of muscle that's just used just to kind of forage for food. We saw them eating the salmon coming upstream, but there was also evidence of them on the tidal plains with the mussels and eating some of the vegetation there as well.
Hi, today we're at the Indians. It's a really prolific place of life. Lots of phytoplankton blooms, algae abounds, a bunch of bull kelp forests that the sea otters are hanging out at. We're also trying to check out some stellar sea lions. We've got some big males with their giant manes hanging around, a little juvenile swimming around. Sometimes they'll come up in the wake of the boat, so we're saying hi to them. We're also zooming around the different kelp forests, some of that bull kelp that the sea otters are hanging out at. The moms will keep their kids right on their stomachs. We've been venturing out looking at different types of puffins like the tufted and the horned puffin, looking at what we call a circus of puffins.
With visual storytelling, I find that people often always think that they need to get that big, impressive image, the National Geographic cover photo. And while those images are amazing and they're definitely important to the story, something that is equally, in my opinion, important is going to be the details, the textures of the story. We need context, we need that filler to lift those iconic shots up. So while you may have amazing wildlife photos and amazing landscape photos, today in the forest, we played with some of the unsung heroes of these landscapes, the maybe minor characters that help bring this whole story of Southeast Alaska to life. That might have been tiny little bird nest fungi, that may have been some salmon berries, that may have been the ferns in the Devil Club. All these independent little players, when we look at the texture, we look at the detail, help paint a more well-rounded and personal connected story than the standalone big pictures do on their own. Our photo excursion today traversed through the Tongass National Forest, which is the largest national forest in the United States. It covers a massive 17 million acres, which is roughly the size of West Virginia. So it's a pretty gorgeous natural area to get to visit, and this particular area is hardly touched by humans. So we're incredibly lucky to get to witness and photograph the wilderness in such a pure state. A few skills we were practicing on today's photo walk is observing light and how it changes in this environment. When we're out on an open beach like this, there's an abundance of light, so we may need to have a faster shutter speed. We may need to have, a higher f-stop number so there's less light coming in through that aperture. There's a lot of elements to respond to when there's an abundance of light. And then as we progress into the forest and that tree canopy starts to dominate, we suddenly are losing our light. So we started to play around with, okay, if there's less light, what do I need to do in order to still get the shot that I'm looking for? How do I still get these details and these vibrant colors when the light has shifted so dramatically from this beach level light to the interior forest light?
Today we're here at Endicott Arm and we're going to go up to the face of Dawes Glacier. Behind me you can probably see a beautiful piece of blue ice that has probably come off of this glacier and calved off in a large event and broken off from the face of the glacier within, say, probably the past 24 to 48 hours. The blue coloring in the ice is telling us basically how dense that piece of ice is. As the sunlight goes into the pieces of ice, if it's super dense, what happens is those rays of light of all the spectrum of the rainbow, basically every color goes in, but the only strong color that is able to refract back out and touch our eyeballs is that blue coloring. So when you see light blue, it's a little bit less dense. Deep blues are very, very dense pieces of ice, and then those clear ones are the ones that are absorbing all the spectrum of light, so you cannot see any color at all. So we're in Endicott Arm, and this is considered a fjord. Basically what that means is the glacier has carved it over thousands of years. The glacier has pushed down and pushed against the sides of the walls and be able to scour the landscape by picking up pieces of bedrock along the way down and moving downward with the center of gravity that they have, pushing down over years and years and years and seasons of snow accumulation, eventually compacting into glacial ice over about 10 years. That's when that ice starts to pick up those pieces of bedrock and carve out this fjord or U-shaped valleys that we see here.
It has been so much fun having everybody on board. We have seen so much. We've seen so much wildlife. We've seen bubble netting whales on more than one occasion. We got to see orca, which we don't always see every single trip. We got to see brown bears feeding on salmon in the stream. And then now we're ending it in front of Dawes Glacier. It doesn't get much better than this. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey, and we hope to see you somewhere in the world again.